There were a bunch of new changes, new exotics, and sandbox tweaks, but one of the biggest things that often get overlooked is the changes that came to the sandbox of your subclass. We're going to talk about them. Let's start off here with the solar changes, starting with Restoration. Restoration X1 and X2 are now down in the amount of health that they give you back. This is both for PvE and PvP. This is down from 25 to 20 for Restoration times 1, from 40 to 32.5 Restoration times 2, and perhaps most importantly, Restoration now no longer stacks with other healing sources. The game will now decide which of the healing sources is stronger and just default to that, so you can no longer throw down a healing rift as well as a restoration grenade at your feet and just basically become immortal to anything that doesn't insta-kill somebody. Ember of Torches now has reduced radiant time down from 10 seconds to 8 seconds and now applies a -10 discipline penalty while it is equipped. This change isn't very impactful by itself, however, when combined with the Ember of Solace change, which used to give a flat 5-second increase to your overall time, which is now down to just a rounded 50% for whatever you've got, is much more noticeable. So that means that whereas previously if you had Ember of Solace, Ember of Torches, and were able to get a melee, it would give you 15 seconds. It's now going to only give you 12, so a difference of 3 seconds. Golden Gun has been changed, mostly nerfed. First of all, the knock 'em down aspect changes what effect it gives to the Golden Guns. Previously, the Marksman Golden Gun, the 3-shot Golden Gun, got increased duration as well as an increase of damage resistance, but now it just gets an increase in duration, whereas the 6-shot Goldie, which was running over the Crucible, in my opinion, for such a very long time, is now only going to get a damage resistance, so not nearly as long as it previously has, which is overall, I think, pretty good. I think that's good for PvE and PvP. It seems to be just a good, smart, common sense change. Blade Barrage now has less overall damage as well. The amount of blades fired per volley is down from 24 to 20, from 5 per group to just 3 per group. This will bring it down in PvE, but I'd still think it's going to be a pretty good option all around. Celestial Fire is much more consistent in PvP as it now deals 100 damage to a target when you're in close range. Previously it dealt 90, meaning that if you did have Celestial Fire ready and you meleeed somebody, the follow-up melee might not kill them because they might have survived, so it's now much more consistent. Besides that though, not really anything here. Void Overshields in PvE are now more resilient. Nova Bomb is now insane. The Vortex Nova Bomb, that is. The Vortex Nova Bomb has always been in this weird spot where it doesn't really have much of a niche compared to Slova Bomb outside of some very, well, niche circumstances. It now is very good at shutting down areas and controlling space, as it got an increase in projectile speed by 21%, not that noticeable, but it now has an increased radius of pull as well as a strength of pull. This thing was hitting out from 14 meters on a stationary target, pulling it not just towards the edge of the Nova Bomb, but towards the center, meaning that this thing is a very good option now for a shutdown tool for PvP, and probably going to be much more consistent for PvE as well. Shield Bash is a little bit more reliable at applying the suppression. You probably won't notice this. Well, hopefully you won't notice this because it should be applying it just more directly. Hunters got a bit of love here as their shadow shots across the board got a bit of a change. Deadfall, the long-lasting one, is now from 8 seconds to 12 seconds for its uptime for its tether. This is a overall 50% increase. This is a great change for both PvP and PvE, as in PvE this will be a much better go-to option for debuffing a target, and in PvP you'll be able to control a zone for a very long time. 12 seconds is an extremely long time in PvP. Shadow Shot Mobius Quiver, in other words the volley of arrows that you got, is now less good at controlling space. It's now from an 8-second uptime to a 6-second uptime after being fired. This ultimately isn't going to change their efficacy as a burst damage tool, but it's going to be not as strong as an option as a long-term debuff tool, maybe like firing a volley, waiting a little bit, and firing your second volley. They should now generally equal out between the Mobius Quiver and the normal Deadfall. Arc got a few interesting changes. Touch of Thunder Storm Grenades are now no longer as long. This is for your Titans. They don't last as long, and they also don't benefit from the Spark of Magnitude, which also increased their effect by as much. This is ultimately a pretty small change. These grenades are still absolutely insanely strong, both PvP and PvE. They're also a little easier to tell, apparently, although this is probably a bit more subjective here. The grenades are a little easier to tell whether it is a friendly grenade or an enemy grenade. Let me know what you think of this one, because I couldn't tell a major difference. In PvE, Ballistic Slam is stronger by 16%. Tempest Strike exactly the same, but except it's 30%. And Arc Souls as well in PvE got a buff from 35 to 60, so a little bit more valuable there. Ball Lightning is now a bit of a sniper melee, sort of similar to Celestial Fire in the range that this thing can fire out from. From 27.5 meters, which is already pretty damn long, to 35 meters. This melee is very good, especially when amplified. This thing can be extremely strong. Definitely give this a try. Chain Lightning in PvE, the other of the Warlock's melee, is now increased in damage by 50%, which is a pretty big deal, as that also gets benefit from being amplified. Chaos Reach finally got its buff. It's now no longer a 9 minute and 16 second charging super. It is down to 7 minutes and 35 seconds. Much faster. You might actually begin to see these things in Trials of Osiris, as that timing is pretty good for a shutdown super to get up relatively early. So it's good to see that. That's about time Chaos Reach got a bit of a buff, if you ask me. Stasis slows are now a bit more impactful, as you get an increase in slowness of about 10%. This won't be very noticeable to most players, as it seems relatively subtle. You're already pretty darn slow to begin with, but it does make for certain instances where running through a Duskfield grenade is a little bit more punishing. Speaking of, Duskfield grenades now apply more slow stacks a little bit faster by about 13%. Cold Snap grenades are far more consistent now, as they will now track a target for half a second after they've started to, reach out to try to find them. This just makes it so where it's not as awkward when you throw it into a room and somebody's moving fast. You have a slightly better chance of actually reaching out and hitting them, which is great. Revenant Hunter and Behemoth Titan now have 2 slots for Winter Shroud and Cryoclasm respectively, as opposed to 1, which is good for build crafting. Shade Binder's Glacial Harvest cooldown is down from 15 seconds to 10 seconds, so you'll be able to get that more often. Whisper of Rending now applies the benefit that it gives to all primary weapons, not just kinetic weapons, which in particular is going to be a little bit terrifying for Cryosthesia. We've already seen a bit of an uptick in Cryosthesia usage inside of PvP, as sidearms in general got a buff, but this will now be even better, because it also can basically give itself a bit of bonus damage when the target is frozen. Do remember though that primary weapons already get a reduction in the amount of damage that they deal to frozen targets, so it's not like you're going to be able to easily infinitely chain this. However, it will be easier. Definitely something to keep your eye out for. And lastly, I want to show off this little setup here for the new SMG. If you have the SMG's perk triggered, where you have that little bar on the side, you've dealt some damage from grounded, and you have a blink equipped, you'll be able to aim in the air, shoot targets, and still blink. It is incredibly fun, and I just wanted to throw it out there. I know this isn't a subclass thing, but I just wanted to throw that out here because it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun in PvP, and even for PvE. This feels like you're fighting Goku. It's pretty great. I'm pretty happy with this. Let me know what your thoughts are on all these changes. Bless your faces, and deuces.